Hey there guys, so I'm back with another video already because right, just put out the official patch 10.25 notes just not too long ago. So here we'll go through it real quick. Here's the infographic for TLDR. You can pause here if you want to see it. And let's jump straight into the patch notes. So we'll have Rel, the Iron Maiden, coming out. So that'll be lots of fun for a lot of people. I know a lot of people are very excited for this champ. Not really. Amumu. So he's got his base mana growth down, his E base damage decrease, and his R stun duration decrease. Really? So his R now scales per rank? I know Amumu is strong, but I feel like nerfing his R stun is like too much. I feel like they should just keep nerfing his E and his W because of the fact he just synergizes so well with items. Holy crap. They're just tired of seeing this, man. Wow, all the Anivia changes went through. So if you guys didn't know, there was a previous video we had covered where Anivia was getting a big kind of work on it, which is getting like a smaller rework. And it looks like all the changes went through. So her basic attack should feel a little bit smoother. So her basic attack animation is like sped up so she can see us better on her. Her basic attacks move faster. Her Q moves faster. And her Q now chills enemies that it passes through. So just in case you pass through and miss the explosion stun part, they're still chilled for your E to do double damage. And then on top of that, your Q does more damage overall if you hit both parts of it now, but less on the pass through and more on the explosion. And it costs less mana as well, and has a lower cooldown as well. Or like as an upper, actually increased the cooldown. It does not have a lower cooldown. They increased it by a second. And then her E went up by 10 base damage per rank, up to 50, and then plus 10% AP scaling. Reduced the mana here. And then they lowered the base damage on her R, but they gave her R a scaling cooldown, so it's no longer 6 seconds all ranks, it's 4, 2.5, and 1 second. So quite a mouthful of changes, a lot of changes. I think with these changes, Anivia could become a very, very strong mage, so we'll see how that pans out. Annie's base movement speed on her E had also gone down a bit. It's still pretty high, 20-50%, but no longer 30-60. This probably also has to reflect with the fact that Staff of Flowing Waters in the game, so just synergize as well. Echo's passive damage into monsters actually went up, and this is probably because he can't clear as fast as some of the other AP jungles right now. Junglers in general are just having trouble clearing with a lot of new items. Fizz's mana growth got decreased. Honestly, I don't know how big this would really affect him. I feel like Fizz just never needs mana anyways, but he just gains mana from building like Ludens and stuff. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I don't think this is really that big of a change. I guess his healing, just in time for his new skin battle if you didn't check out the other video. But his passive now is going to heal him 2% more of his max health, and his W cooldown went down by 1 second. Nothing too big. Honestly, it's kind of just nicer for the jungle sustain and jungle clear. Which is going to be a lot of these buffs, to be honest with you. The attack damage really went up by 2 attack damage, insane. And her Q cooldown got decreased as well by 1 second. And then Ivern got a decent amount of buffs too, which I was pretty happy about because I actually like playing Ivern jungle. His Q cooldown got decreased, his E cooldown got decreased as well. His shield got increased, and his R basic attack speed is increased as well. So Daisy being able to hit more, gain a bigger shield ratio on a lower cooldown on the shield, and a lower cooldown on Q is just so nice. It's like a lot of buffs all in one. Jin's minimum damage ratio was decreased. So Jin got a pref level nerfs because they nerfed almost all of his items, and then they nerfed him a little bit too with the minimum damage ratio on his nade. This way, I guess just tapping someone with your nade won't do as much. It's honestly like a small change. More of his changes are towards the item changes. Cardus' Q cost that got decreased at later ranks, and his damage ratio was also increased. This is probably due to the fact that there's less mana in the game, like Window, Rod of Ages, and most of the mana items being mythics. The base magic resist of Kayle went down. Her E passive damage ratio has also went down. Kayle is still overperforming. Even last patch, after they completely nerfed her by like 3 whole nerfs and 3 of her items, she was still the top win rate for almost the whole patch. So I think she honestly needs more. She needs like that Amumu treatment where she just needs a hard nerf. Kane's base armor is getting decreased, and his Q base damage is also getting decreased, but the cooldown's going up, so his clear is worse because he does clear really easily, and he buys whip super early because of the fact that he does really well with Gore Drinker on Red Kane. It's very, very strong. Honestly, these changes suck. Like, they're pretty nasty to take down like 20 damage and increase the cooldown by a second because that slows down the clear quite a bit. But it's honestly very needed as he's an insanely strong jungler right now.
And then giving Lee Sin some base armor, W cooldown decrease, and E base damage is increased as well. Lee Sin's just not in a good spot. He's usually used to sitting at a lower win rate than most because of how skill dependent he is. But he is suffering really hard, so small buff is probably nice here. This was a weird change. So they're making Lulu's Q do more damage if you hit both parts now. So now both parts can hit, and it now deals a 25 bonus damage. But they no longer have like a fall off damage, so they'll do the full damage all the way through everything. But the bullets only deal 70% damage to minions. It's interesting because I see what they want to do. They want to make Lulu's Q be able to like wave clear and hit more for support Lulu to have more pressure, and to show skillful play with 2 Qs like hitting the same person. But I'm pretty sure this buffs lane Lulu too, because I know it says it'll deal 70% damage to minions. But if both bolts deal 70%, isn't that technically more than what it was if it was just hitting one? So really interesting change here, because I see what they're going for, and they always hate when lane Lulu does good, and it's a problem to balance. So I think this kind of change is cool, but at the same time it's just asking for nightmares with lane Lulu. So we'll see how this one pans out. Honestly, I think this one's a really bad change, and it's probably gonna make Lulu's mains cry, because she's gonna get a lot of change after this if it really does make lane Lulu good. This is pretty nice. Mordekaiser is actually someone that everyone thought was going to do really good with Riftmaker and Demonic and a lot of the new items, and it just hasn't been performing. So now they're upping his Q isolation damage, so that's when his Q hits just one target. It does an increased bonus damage, so they're increasing the percentage from 35% to 50%. Pretty big now. So if you're ever fighting against Mordekaiser and he just does a lot of damage now, just know like you gotta not get hit by a single Q. Or like a single man Q. Have some minions with you there. It's gonna hurt now, really hard. The W damage over time was decreased on Morgana. She's a really oppressive mid lane. It's super safe. I played her. It's so free. Like, you don't do anything. The Q cooldown was decreased on Nasus, probably to increase the stack timers, which is interesting to me because I think that's pretty. I thought he was doing pretty well with how much haste Gore Drink and some of the items gives. But I think I'm also like the only person building Gore Drink on Nasus. I think a lot of people still like going Triforce or tank items. So it's cool. I mean, anything to help Nasus, right? Because he's always in a weird spot. But if they give him too much and he stacks too fast, it becomes really nuts. This change will be nice and pretty welcomed, I feel like. They lowered the cooldown or the Q cost? Yeah, the Q cost of mana and then increased the damage at later. Wait, so there's a maximum and minimum? Oh, okay. So they increased the maximum and the minimum damage of Nidalee Spear. So it could do a lot at short range and close range. A lot more now. How much is on the minimum? Oh, it's just an AP percent. Okay, interesting. So it's higher AP scalings, and then it just could do a lot more in a snipe with lower cooldown. And then decrease the cost on her E as well. That's cool. I honestly, I don't think I've seen a single Nidalee since new item, so I have no idea how this feels. Pantheon. So they just like Anivia, they did a lot of extra work on Pantheon. So here are all the changes here. Let me get them all on one screen so you can pause and read them if you want to. So they don't like the Pantheon support. Surprise to whose extent, you know. So they wanted to make changes to focus it more into the lane. But I saw these changes and I was like, I think this is still gonna be a good support pick. So his early release cooldown of his Q, so when he stabs instead of throwing it, the cooldown's being refunded by 60% instead of 50%, so you get it up faster. It costs less mana, but it no longer slows if it's empowered. And then his base damage went up on his stun too. And I think they were talking about how the nerf to his E and Q will make him stop being a support. But it's kind of weird because if you give him all this extra base damages and less mana, so he can spam them more often and do more damage, like, is it really going to stop him from being a support? And then his E is probably the biggest change. So his E can no longer block turret shots, which I guess was the main reason for taking him out of support. But like, even if his E can't block turret shots, he's still a good support. He's still got point and click with high base damages, and even higher base damages now with good roaming capability. So I understand that like the E was super BS to dive with as a support, but I think it's just a different play style now. It's more like a pike. I definitely think he could still shine as a support. It also means his E, when he does the empowered E, it won't last as long as well now. And he can move faster when he's walking backwards with his E. And this is what's weird. They made his ult have a passive where depending on the rank, he now gains 10, 20, and 30% armor pen. And then when his spear lands on the ground before he does, in a small circle around it, it will slow the enemies and do 50% of its damage. So, like, this whole change list is lower cooldown, lower mana, high base damage, more effects, no slow, and no blocking tower shots. But you ask me, I think it's still a good candidate for support. So kind of weird. I mean, I guess I'll see how this plays out. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I could totally believe it. But this does look like it would still be decent at support. Maybe not like insane as it is now, because blocking tower shots is kind of nuts. But definitely still viable, I'd imagine. And wow, these Samira nerfs are big. I'm surprised they went through most of these. So before, she could dash in and knock up someone who was immobilized, and that was super annoying. But now she can only do that to people who are already knocked up. So that means Leona will no longer proc any of that passive for Samira. So she's gonna want things like a Nautilus, an Alistair, and a Thresh to do the small knockup off the Nautilus hook, the Alistair Q, and the Thresh Flay to proc her passive now. So it's pretty interesting stuff. And her Q also no longer has a crit lifesteal effectiveness of 100, now it's 66, so she won't lifesteal so much off the Q sword slash. And they also did the same thing for her R as well, so her R can no longer get a higher crit lifesteal enhancer. So taking down a lot of her lifesteal here. Pretty big nerf, I feel like. I didn't know how I feel about the Seraphine change. So her health growth went up by 10. Pardon me. And now if she single shields herself, I guess in lane, like a mid lane, the shields now increased by 50%. I mean, it's not a bad buff. It's just is this gonna make her good? She's kind of lackluster, and most people play her support to even begin with, so it's super weird. But I get that they definitely want to push her mid, which I'm totally okay with. I don't like her as a support anyways. So they adjusted Shyvana's passive for other game modes that are not Summoner's Rift, because I believe we're getting Nexus Blitz back, and an ARAM as well is adjusted. Small change, nothing crazy. And now Talia might be a really good jungler, because now her subsequent Q hits on a monster will no longer deal reduced damage anymore, so she'll be able to clear out much faster. I was actually playing Talia jungle on my live stream a week ago or so, and it felt pretty good. It just the clear was a little slow, but I think with this kind of a change, it could be really nuts, especially with Night Harvester. Now they nerfed AP Twitch last patch, they want to buff Twitch so he could be a decent ADC since he's kind of down in the gutters right now. So they increased the attack speed on his Q, the slow on his W, and his R bonus damage is also increased as well. Pretty big changes. Hopefully it's enough. I don't think it will be. Twitch doesn't really have a solid item build that he really loves. They gave Yasuo and Yone some more attack speed per growth. They didn't want to buff him too hard, even though they absolutely gutted him with the Rage Blade change, because they did make big item changes in this patch too, so they have to be careful with these two champions, as they are always abusers of items, and that's what makes them strong. Rengar's W healing from monsters was increased, and now deals bonus damage on monsters. He needs it. Now he doesn't have Tiamat, his clear is really slow, but it's just as clear. Warwick's passive bonus damage was increased, and now the tooltip will reflect that accurately. So this is pretty nuts, because it's only a little bit of base damage now, and it's bonus on hit damage. So it's 2 at rank 1 up to 4, and it may seem like a little bit, and it adds up. But with how Warwick works, and he gains more attack speed, and more attack speeds are lower, it adds up pretty fast. And his ult also applies his on hit effects I think 5 times. So it's also in that regard, it also buffs his ult, and also buffs his healing. When he's low health, he uses that bonus healing. So even though it's a small damage buff, it adds up pretty hard from his a good amount of attacks from his W, and against monsters and champions, and his ult also proccing it, and his healing. So this is actually a really big buff for Warwick. The W return damage is increased at later ranks. I guess Talon falls off too hard. I see him doing pretty good, so I'm surprised they made a change like this. But I guess he's not doing good enough for most people. Wukong's E now deals more damage on monsters, making him have some more jungle clear. Honestly, I haven't seen him jungle once since the new items, but I might try it. And here are the item changes. So these are pretty big. I know these are huge. So the collector will no longer execute on minions. It will only work on champions now. So poor Jin will no longer be able to execute the minions on his nade just to get a 4th bounce nade that's really high.
Pretty big change there, and people want to have good clear. Mirror Mana now only procs on abilities that deal physical damage and basic attacks. So that way, people like Orianna aren't abusing it anymore. I saw, I think, Orianna and Azir and a couple other mages abusing it. This one's pretty big. Guinsoo's Rage Blade now converts all your crit chance to on-hit damage, leaving you with 0% crit chance. So the way it works now is really weird because even though it's just like, it sounds like a tooltip upgrade because that's all it is, it works differently for Tryndamere now, and it's exclusively Tryndamere. So it converts all your crit chance now instead of just like whatever you have. So before, Tryndamere would hit 100 crit with like 2 crit items in his passive, and he'd get the max cap. Now Tryndamere can build a full 100 crit and then his crit from his passive to amp the damage of Rage Blade. So it's kind of weird. I don't think it will actually like come of anything, but just think it's kind of weird and funny. They also nerfed Zeke's a bit. It was really interesting. They like nerfed and buffed it. They nerfed the stats, but then buffed the effects so it does more bonus damage and it lasts longer. But then nerfed the stats. And honestly, I don't really like buying Zeke's, even though it's really good now. I just like, it's so understated for the item. So I want to see how this pans out because I used to love Zeke's. Seeker's arm guards went down by 10 AP. Honestly, this is a really annoying change. Everyone wants the armor to be off this thing. Really weird. Honestly, I wish they'd nerfed Anya's a little bit harder, but that's just me. Basic attacks no longer grant 1 tick of damage on the knives. So now you need to do abilities or AoE abilities to get that tick damage going. They nerfed some of the support item, or didn't nerf, they cleaned up, I should say, some of the support items. They reduced the cost of the Bandle Glass Mirror by 100, so it's 265 combined gold. And that reduced the gold of all the items that had Bandle Glass Mirror in it as well, while also changing some of the effects. And thankfully, they also changed some of the more itemizations. I had this big problem with building any of the Ardent or Staff of Floor and Water, where it would be a Forbidden Idol for 800 gold, and it would be a Blasting Wand for 860 gold. And as a support, sometimes you just don't back with 800. You usually back with 600 or 400. So it's hard to find times to buy things, and you just have a lot of gold on you. So now it's going to be Forbidden Idol and 2 Amplifying Tomes plus the 630 gold, which is much better in my opinion. So a lot of gold reductions and build path changes, but a lot of items are staying very similarly statted until you get to the Mythic. The Mythics are their changes here. So the Imperial Mandate will be doing less damage overall, as it's insanely strong on almost any support that has a decent amount of CC. The ally damage is also going down a bit too, so it's just down total damage. Or no, they're buffing the ally damage, my bad. So that this way the total damage stays the same, but it really enforces the idea of a support, so that your other ally also has to hit them instead of just doing a lot up front too. Because there'd be times where supports would be roaming with these, and just them doing the initial hit was enough to kill people. And then they also wanted to buff Moonstone, since they aren't seeing enough of it on the right people. I assume that's for Nami and some of the other supports who just proc Mandate way too well. But now Moonstone Healer will heal a lot more, both from the base and from the ramp up per second, which is really nice. And then reducing the gold of Locket, Eye, and Solari, and then upping its shield a bit. And also decreasing the gold for Shurelya's as well, since they're in the same slot. So overall, these changes are pretty cool. I love it, and this is my biggest one. Like nerfing Mandate and then keep changing the build path for some of these is like huge, because I felt really bad to back. And then here's also a very big one. They're changing a lot of the crit items for Marksman and Yasuo and Yone. So they're making Gale Force have 5 more AD and lower the cooldown by 30 seconds. That's pretty big, because Gale Force is kind of a weird item, but its active is very strong. So I think maybe people will build it more now. I'm not too sure. Essence Weaver is up by 5 AD. Yeah, it's pretty nice. I honestly thought it was a pretty good item anyway, so just buffing them more is nice. And then they're reducing the cost of all the crit items by 100, 150, or 200 gold, depending which item you are looking at. And this is insane. So if you're any sort of crit marksman that's going to go triple crit, you're going to come at your 3 item power spike much, much faster, since each of these items are down by about 200, 350 gold. And they also changed how IE works now. So if you have at least 60% critical strike chance, so 3 item crit spike again, Infinity Edge now grants 35% critical strike damage, which is really weird, because with the previous effect, that meant you got 40% at 100% crit chance. So your true 6 item late game is 5% critical strike damage weaker than before, but you could come online a lot faster. So it's a nerf and a buff depending on how you see it. I think it's more of a buff since most games don't get to that point nowadays. But if it does, then it kind of sucks that you're not as strong. So I don't know how I feel about that. But we'll see. Hopefully it makes ADCs good because they are kind of weird. Unless you're an ADC who's abusing lifesteal or lethality, you're not doing that right now. They changed the mana mythics, so Ludens and Everfrost a little bit. They just gave them 10 more haste each and then gave Ludens less penetration as well. And then they changed some of the lethality mythics, so Duskblade's Night Stalker passive on hit slow will now only proc on melees instead of ranged. I don't even know who exactly was using this, because I thought most of the range who are abusing lethalities are building like Eclipse and Prowlers, like Quinn Prowlers, Eclipse Jhin, Prowlers Jhin. Like, no one really wants a Duskblade on ADC, because they want the Omnivamp from Eclipse and the flat armor percent and the highest lethality possible from Prowlers. Nobody wants the haste CDR. If anybody just wanted to do it for fun with the Invis, I didn't see it as being an optimal item on like ranged people, but maybe I just didn't know. So whatever. I mean, it's just like a small nerf. I feel like it doesn't matter for most people. Nerfing some more to tank mythics again. Yeah, very needed. I'm surprised they didn't go harder on Sunfire here. So they increased Bomby Cinder gold to 1,100 instead of 1,000 gold. That's pretty huge because now the tank supports need to get a gank off, a successful gank at that too, to be able to back and get the bombies to help they clear. If they don't get a successful gank or they get counter jungled or lose the scuttle, they probably won't have the gold to be able to back and buy bombies to get a better clear for themselves now. So with that, they also reduced the health on Sunfire by 100. Nothing crazy. Honestly, they should have went harder and nerfed some more of the damage or the scaling on it. But then for Frostfire and Chemtank, they actually nerfed the effects. For Frostfire, the field range is much smaller, so the circle will be smaller, and you won't get as big anymore with increased size. Kind of sad that they did that because I just have a lot of fun being big. And the supercharged slow duration when Chemtank went down to 1.5 instead of 2 seconds. So I'm surprised they didn't nerf the effect of Sunfire, since I think everyone's problems and frustrations stem from Sunfire and not so much Frostfire or Turbo Chemtank. They also updated the shop UI so you can see more data and like scale up the shop by pulling the corners of the pins and stuff. They changed the chat. A lot of people don't like how the chat looks, but I kind of like it. Nexus Blitz is coming back. And they had a ranked update. So believe it or not, ranked will be coming back very soon. I think January 8th. Yeah, January 8th of 2021, the ranked season will come back out. And then they talk a little bit about LP stuff here and initial placements. So you can pause and read that if you're into it. And 2021 will refund you a token again. So you can grab your refund token. And you go to this content refund FAQ page and you can get it there. And I'll post that link at the bottom of the description and a pinned comment as well. Some bug fixes, quality of life, and this is when the Battle Queen skins will also come out with the Elder Word skins and the Prestige Edition for the Battle Queen Diana. I believe this is an event, so you should be able to buy a pass when this happens. So if you're into passes, look out for that as well. But yeah, that was my patch 10.25 notes and rundown. Hopefully you guys liked the video. If you watched all the way through to the end, you're a homie. You should comment down below Oreos or something so I know. That'd be kind of funny. And if you like these kind of videos, subscribe. We put out Riot news, updates, gameplays, lives, and bonus content pretty often here. And we have a pretty loving community, both on the community page and our active socials on Twitter and Discord. So you should join that as well. But with that, guys, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.